Welcome back to the Titanium Hangar. This is Mike, and happy Friday, everybody. Hope everybody's going to have a great weekend this weekend. Today I want to talk to you about upcoming cassettes. We're going to actually talk about past, present, and future. We're going to talk about the ghost of past, present, and future when it comes to all of these cassettes, so you can kind of see what the options are that are out there, the options that are on the way, including with Fanstoys and Deformation Space. But of course, MMC, what did Takara already do? What did KFC already do? What was G1? We're going to talk about that, and a deeper dive into the blaster situation. I'll give you all my thoughts on all of that. It's a little bit deeper than what I can do in the news. And we're going to talk about all of this and more coming up. Alright, so the first thing we really need to talk about is what we have now, what we know for sure by what these companies have released, and what we can see in this picture right here is pretty much the Rumble Frenzy, and hey, Rumble and Frenzy, you can pick which color you like. And you have on the left the original G1, and no, I don't have his guns in there. I keep forgetting to put those in. Then right next to that, you have what Takara gave us in around 2012-ish, that time frame. And then you have what Fanstoys just recently put out. And then next to that, you have the MMC. Now, the first thing you're going to notice in this is the scale. It seems like from G1 to Fanstoys, those are all pretty similar in size. Now, Fanstoys is a step up from what Takara did size-wise and scale-wise and all that good stuff, so it's a little bit bigger. And then you can see MMC is even still almost double that, so they're in a league of their own. There's nobody even trying to target MMC with the full-size cassettes and all of that. The second thing we have to take into account is how these things scale with other Transformers, the bigger masterpiece ones, such as Soundwave here. So when you look here at Soundwave, or this is the acoustic wave from Robot Paradise, you can kind of see a size comparison that would make sense next to the still that I grabbed out of the Transformers 86 movie. Now looking at this, you can see that the three on the left seems smaller than what you see in the still from the movie. And if you look, MMC is still a little bit too big. So with all of that, what do you want for your collection? What do you think scale is? What works for you the best? I personally felt like Fanstoys was the closest, happiest medium in the middle there. But I still, in my mind personally, I like the scale and the aesthetic of what MMC is doing, but I like the paint and the presentation of Fanstoys. But I've always felt like G1 is too small for Masterpiece, and I also felt Takara is too small for Masterpiece. So kind of, there's a comparison to give you an idea of what you want on your shelf. Alright, so getting into Eject and Rewind now, looking at the picture we just saw, now we can kind of get a look at this one here and get the scale for the upcoming Eject and Rewind. So since pretty much scale is going to be the same, aesthetics will be very similar and all that kind of stuff, we can see what we got on the very left is a G1 figure, and it was kind of goofy back then, but you knew it was a bot. It was supposed to be on par with kind of the Rumble and Frenzy, but it still had kind of some wonky proportions to it. They fixed that a little bit, and they made it a more slim, streamlined version when KFC put theirs out. Now, I personally don't have any problems with mine. A lot of people say they have QC issues with their KFC ones. Now, I do with my Ramhorn. I'll get to that when we get to KFC in Ramhorn. Next, we have the Fanstoys, the number third one on there, and you can kind of see the aesthetic and where they're going with that. And then the last one on the very far right is MMC. So all of these seem to be decent options. I mean, obviously G1 is G1, but they all seem to be pretty decent options depending on what your scale is. Now, the one thing I do know about Fanstoys is that their paint presentation is going to blow away all of these, but I do like the scale and the size and the heft and the beefiness of the MMC. And I do have the KFCs, and I don't really have an issue with them other than the fact that I just think they're too small. They're too close to the originals because they were trying to match the Takara, and what you see with Fanstoys, they're trying to be a little bit bigger than Takara, and MMC, of course, doing their own thing. So there are some differences here. Also, looking with aesthetic, you do see a few things that I do notice with the waist piece on, it's the hip flaps when it comes to Fanstoys. Now, their hip flap looks to be something that's going to move and rotate with the leg. That's the way it appears right there, so that is kind of cool. And with this, I actually can't tell what's going to be die-cast, what's not going to be die-cast. So a lot of their other stuff did show off or flaunt the die-cast. They're not doing that with this one for whatever reason. So still, it does look pretty good. It does look like it's a good offering. And again, KFC, Fanstoys, or MMC, I don't think you really could go wrong with any of these options. I think they're all decent options. I don't hate the KFC. So now we're getting into the Ramhorn and the Ramhorn options that are out there. So starting in the very middle here, you see the G1, and actually I think G1 Ramhorn was a pretty decent one. The biggest problem with the G1 were the legs were just too close together, and I do think that a couple of options, most of these options, actually fix that. Now KFC still kind of has their legs a little bit too close together in my opinion, and that horn falls off if you sneeze on it, or heck, if you just fold it out, it'll fall off. It's really a bad design on the horn, kind of a cool idea, bad design. But aside from that, the KFC one is almost a copy of the vintage G1. Now the bottom left is the deformation space. Now I gotta tell you, I'm a bit disappointed just by looking at this picture. Maybe when I get it in hand I'll like it better, but I'm not really liking the way it looks. And so with that, I think it's the weakest option, even weaker than G1. But it does spread the legs out, which is the problem with G1, and it gives him a wider stance, which is something that I'd like to see in this character, and it looks pretty good. But it seems like his head's way too small, his horn's too small, but we'll see. Then moving to the top right, there's the Fanstoys. Now I do think the Fanstoys one looks good, and one of the problems with all the Fanstoys ones are the gappiness or the openings in the back, and just kind of left the look unfinished. So with this, from this angle, it doesn't look unfinished. Maybe from the very back, the rear, it would look unfinished, but this, I think, looks okay. I think I'm fine with this. So it does look pretty good. There's actually some more interesting kind of line work on the face that they got going on there, and I'm sure they're going to have a lot of paint to accentuate that. You'll see the eyes painted and all that kind of stuff. Hopefully it's not side-eye or anything like that, but side-eye. And it looks good overall. It's got the wider stance, and it's pretty much what you would expect. But then you get to the bottom MMC, and this is just a render because they don't have a prototype that I could find. And from the render of the MMC, I think it stands out. It's going to be the standout best one, in my opinion, just based on this picture. Now, I could be wrong because we're just looking at a picture, and we don't have an actual prototype in hand yet. So comparing them all when they all get in hand is going to be a different story. But looking at it, I think MMC is going to win almost every one of these. I think it does look great. Now getting into Steeljaw, and on the very left you get to see the G1. And one thing about that, they did use vac metallized, so it's appealing. It looks very appealing with the vac metallized weapons, the wings piece there, so that looks really good. And then getting into what KFC did. Now KFC, my biggest complaint with that one, number one, was that it was too small. Now looking at it here, it does look cheap. And so small and cheap. At the same time, I think I got mine for 15 bucks. I don't know what the MSRP was on it because I didn't get it right when it was released. And I was like, oh, I guess I'll get it for 15. So it looks okay on the shelf. It does all right. But again, feels too small. Looks a little cheap. Getting into the Fanstoys one, the third one there. Now, the thing with the Fanstoys, first off, they are going to paint theirs very well. And I did scrape some paint on one of my cassettes when I did my Soundwave review. And hopefully I don't scrape them on the cassettes I'm reviewing in the next few days. But looking at this one here, it does actually look like a good Steeljaw overall. But I'm kind of curious about kind of the mane and how that was done, that you get to see all of the pins that are in there right behind the head. I know that's a little bit strange looking, but he does have a pretty decent wide stance. Looks like it's got some good articulation to it. And of course, he's got the weapons and the steel part back there. I am very confident that it's going to look beautiful once it's painted. It's going to have a very nice, very attractive, very appealing paint job when it's done, and that's really where Fanstoys shines, and they're definitely going to shine with this figure. And MMC's, theirs looks really good, the very last one there. It's big, but it's going to be bare. They don't do much paint. There's not a whole lot of paint apps to theirs, and it's not really standout presentation-wise, but the size of it, the aesthetic, and how it can actually pose, the posability of their figures, it's just impressive. Those are impressive. So this one is going to be kind of a toss-up there, though. I actually heard that Deformation Space is making one if it looks a lot like their Ramhorn. I don't know if I'm even interested, but I am interested in their blaster, which we'll talk about in a second. But looking at this, there's your options. Which one do you like? Okay, so getting into Blaster himself, here are the options that are out there. Obviously, on the very left, the G1 toy, and G1 Blaster is one of the few G1 toys that actually scales with Masterpiece currently. You can put it on your shelf and it scales with your Masterpiece Transformers, but it doesn't have the aesthetic. It's blocky, and of course, no articulation, little to no articulation with it. And with that, next to it, we have KFC. Now, KFC, I have a bit of a love, and there's not much of a hate, but love relationship with that figure because it's really what got me to jump into third party with both feet, because all the other options that were out there I just felt weren't good enough to put on a masterpiece shelf. So I had to go to third party to start dialing out a decent looking masterpiece shelf. So this figure here did it for me. And I still like it. I still like a lot about it. But I knew at the time I first got my hands on it that there'd be a better one coming down the road. But then I didn't really think it would be as overly simplistic as what we're getting with the Deformation Space and the Fanstoys. So looking at Deformation Space and the Fanstoys side by side, the first thought that came to my mind, they're both trying to make the original toy with more articulation. That's just the way it felt when I looked at it. Now obviously they're trying to match the animation as close as they can, and the animation is a little bit different here and there. So with that, it's kind of still an interpretation, and which interpretation do you like the most? But looking at this, I think the Deformation Space looks good, and the Fanstoys looks good also. A couple things that were pointed out to me in the comments from last week were that Fanstoys and how they have that hip articulation in the thigh articulation kind of breaks up that sculpt. It looks a little strange. I couldn't figure it out myself why I thought something looked a little odd, and I guess I do agree with that comment right there. And so that's one odd issue with it, but both of them look good. They're both okay, but hey, I missed the pre-order It Show Z on this guy. I check it every day, but I guess I didn't check at the right time, and it was sold out when I first checked. So anyhow, I'm not worried about it because it's probably going to be one of those things like right now you can get acoustic wave still, so not a big deal to me, in my opinion. Just hopefully the price doesn't jump too high once it's released. So getting into Deformation Space and Fanstoys side by side, they're both trying to show off the articulation, kind of what all they can do, and I think they're going to be similarly comparable when it comes to articulation. You can see right there is what appears to be a double joint on the knees for Fanstoys, but maybe it's not. Maybe it's just getting you an extreme bend right there. But they're both going to have a decent level of articulation, and I do think that the transistor from KFC is good. It's okay, and if you pass on both these, if you have transistor, you'd be fine. But this is going for more of a tuned look, and this is the direction all Masterpiece seems to be going for the most part. So here we are, 2 years, almost 3 years later after we saw these and got all excited, and I am still more or less on board with the MMC cassettes. I like all of them, but that's not going to stop me from buying the Fanstoys ones. It's not going to stop me from picking up Deformation Space and what's going on with that. So I really want to get these in hand, all of them in hand, see the ones I like for myself the most, and that's, I think, the best way to go. If you're on an extreme budget, which I think a lot of people are going to be soon, then you really do need to pick and choose which one you like the best, which aesthetic you like the best. I'm curious what you guys think below. I try to make this video to make it helpful for you, help you make decisions, and save pockets. Let me know in the comments below, like and subscribe. So Dear Hanger out.